Good evening, everyone. It is Wednesday night, August 19th, and it is 9:30 on the East Coast. And if you're looking at your screen right now, watching us live on YouTube, you see a number 8. You don't see that number 8 on this Niners jersey because I'm a Niners fan. You don't see it because I'm a lefty. And you don't see it because, like I said, I am a diehard fan of the soon-to-be 5-11 49ers. You're seeing it because that's my pick. I am the number 8 pick in the first annual Knock and Roll Show, Pros vs. Joe's Live League Draft. John, I can tell how excited you are that I did that intro the way I did, by how you put your head down in shame.
It was amazing. It was probably our best start ever.
Which isn't saying much if you've seen the other starts we've had. I'd like to welcome everybody to the show tonight. We have a very special, edition of the show, joined by 3 phenomenal pros. We have 4 awesome Joes that are waiting to start our draft in about 15 minutes, and then there's the 3 of us who are always here no matter what. And of course, I'm talking about myself, Damien over there, and J3 down there with his ice cube beard. So let me start off by letting everybody know what's going to be going on here tonight. Again, is the live draft. We'll be starting at 9:45, and we'll be on the air doing that draft and discussing picks and general fantasy football things for about the next hour after that. So at about 10:45, we'll wrap up the podcast recording, and then of course we'll continue the draft here for the league, which we will discuss. Next week we'll do a draft recap, talk about the later rounds, have some special guests, and of course, have these great pros with us on future episodes. But let me start by introducing our panel tonight. Outside of the 3 of us that are always here, I want to start wearing a sweet, sweet, sweet Panama hat I believe Damien referred to. We've got Adam Harstad joining us. He's from Texas, one of the most respected up-and-coming fantasy football minds, and he's a writer for Football Guys. You can follow him on Twitter at Adam Harstad. Adam, welcome to the Mock and Roll Show.
Thanks for having me, guys. Absolutely.
Up next, if you listened to our show last week, we have this guy who's wearing a yellow shirt now. I don't know what's up with that. And earlier I was worried that he was going to draw mustaches on people on the screens here. But representing FFchamps.com, he's a co-host for Fantasy Football Champs Tuesdays and Thursdays on Patriots.com, the official website of the New England Patriots. And he's also representing ESPN Radio of the Lehigh Valley, based out of Easton, Pennsylvania. You can follow him at the PPR Monster on Twitter. Anthony Grace, welcome back to the Mock and Roll Show.
Hello, gentlemen, everybody. Thanks for having me back again. Looking forward to doing this. It's going to be a great time. A fun draft for sure.
Yeah, and you know what? I think Damien and John, I think I speak for the 3 of us when I say you being back here on the show means that you either had a really great time last time or you just really had nothing else to do.
It might be a little bit of both. I'm not going to lie to you. It might be a little bit of both, but hey, doesn't matter. I'm here.
And last but not least, a man who shaved off one hell of a sweet beard, according to a picture I saw a few minutes ago. He's a contributor to NumberFire.com. He's a columnist for Pro Football Focus, and he's an MFL 10 and DFS guru. You can follow him on Twitter at DudeFantasyBro. Scott Barrett, welcome to the Mock and Roll Show.
Thanks for having me on, guys. Big fan.
Absolutely. So listen, before we get started here, I just want to kind of, touch base with each of you. And Adam, I'm going to start with you. What do you have a specific strategy that you take into every single one of your drafts that you sort of follow, each one? Now, obviously, there's a difference between standard and PPR, and that's going to play a role. But I mean, do you focus in on certain types of players or a certain position more than others when you do your drafts?
Yeah, I find when I'm entering a draft, I usually try to focus on the guys who I think will score more points, and then leave the guys who will score fewer points for everybody else to draft. And that's usually been a pretty successful strategy for me so far.
This guy.
Wait, listen, Damien, listen, there goes. I told you I would try and get him to tell you his strategy so that you can steal his picks.
Wait, hold on.
That
Adam,
didn't work.
Can you just repeat that one more time? Hold on. I got to write this down.
Okay. All right. You want to get the guys who score more points, and then not draft the guys who score fewer points.
More points. God, that
Gotcha.
always gets me.
This is like the Matrix, man. This is like the moment in the Matrix when Neo sees all of the other pods, and that's it right
Real
there.
life?
Anthony, the last time we were here, we had some really interesting discussions about C.J. Anderson, DeMarco Murray, and Matt Forte. Obviously, you saw LaShawn McCoy now. He's in a lot of trouble, and he's hurt. He's going to be out for some time. So who do you see as the next back to maybe try to move up? You know what I mean? If you were planning on taking a McCoy late in the first round, who's the next guy on your radar outside of those three that we just talked about last week?
Well, I'm going to say depending on what kind of league you're playing in, standard scoring, you got to go Jeremy Hill. That guy is just a monster. Came in hot last year. I think he's going to keep doing it. He's going to be the featured back this year. And if you're playing PPR, Justin Forsette's got to be a guy you look at that point. Mark Trestman coming in. Look what Matt Forte did last year, set a record with 102 receptions by a running back. So Justin Forsette's going to get a lot of looks this year. And their wide receiving core in Baltimore, Rashard Perriman's not practicing. Steve Smith's another year older. They're going to rely a lot on Justin Forsett down there.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good point. You're making Damien pretty happy over there with your assessment of Jeremy Hill. He has him as a keeper in our main league, so he's pretty pumped about that. Damien, what round did you have to give up for him?
I think I'm giving up a 9th rounder for Jeremy Hill this year. I'll take it.
Yeah, I think Johnny needs to reconsider who you're allowed to keep. If that's going to be the case, and Scott, I want to come over to you with an interesting question. It's actually something Damien and I were talking about earlier. It seems like when you're looking at a lot of first round boards, depending on who's making the picks. I know Anthony, when we were talking last week about the number 6 pick, after the top 5 backs are off the board, he's a big fan, and a lot of people seem to be a big fan of looking at a guy like Antonio Brown. So let me ask you this: what is your opinion of would you take an Antonio Brown or a top flight wideout as early as 6 or 7 in a standard league, or are you still of the mindset that you continue taking backs that because they're a thinner position?
Yeah, Zach Arisa wrote a great series on running back bust rates and why it's actually more advantageous to go running back early consistently. But for me, there's a big drop off after C.J. Anderson, let's say, in standard leagues. So as soon as maybe the 7th overall pick, I have no problem going wide receiver, and then maybe going wide receiver again and trying out a 0 RB / upside down draft strategy.
Yeah, no, that's an interesting perspective too. I'm also a big proponent of taking running backs early. I feel like wide receiver this year is it's maybe as strong as it's ever been, through the first few rounds. There's a lot of talent there. Johnny, at what point do you feel like you see, a big drop-off in talent, at the end of the wide receiver 2 tier? You know what I mean? Like, where do you think is really the drop-off?
I think it's right after, and again, unfortunately he's hurt, but I think it's right after the Alshon Jeffries. I think because now you're getting into DeAndre Hopkins, Jordan Matthews, Brandon, a lot of young guys there. I think after that point, you're kind of getting into more flyer range, where guys who had a little bit of success, young guys who kind of are on that brink of being a star. But yeah, I'm saying right after probably Alshon Jeffrey, like that range.
And Damien, talking about that, we had talked about quarterbacks, and personally, I'm not a fan of quarterback early. I know you and I have had those discussions, and then you have your top 2 quarterbacks, and then you have your next group. Again, it's sort of the same question for quarterbacks. Where do you see the break between your tier 2 quarterbacks and then your next group of quarterbacks?
Oh boy, that's tough. For me, I think quarterbacks is very fluid, and I think you have to follow along with what the people you're drafting, what they're doing, and what you want out of the league. But I'll tell you, this year I'm perfectly happy with. I don't love the idea necessarily of just straight up streaming, because I think that's a little bit risky. Sigmund Bloom at Football Guys talks about that. I do like the idea of getting 2, late guys like Sam Bradford and maybe Carson Palmer, and just playing matchups. So I'm totally cool with just doing that this year.
Excellent. Just chatting here with our offline drafters, and I'd like to take a second and mention those guys. Of course, the Pros versus Joes draft isn't complete without the Joes, and I guess you could say Joanne's. So I want to give a nice shout out to John from Bangor, Pennsylvania, who's in our league. Then we have Ryan from Easton, Pennsylvania. We've got Jersey Jen from New Jersey, and then of course we have Jason, who is from Jersey by way of Michigan, and then back to Jersey. And also, of course, before we get into the draft, I want to just remind our listeners who are tuned in, who will be listening to the podcast version of this when it goes up. The draft order for our draft is Damien from the Mock and Roll Show with the first pick, Jen, one of our Joes, with the second pick, Anthony Grace from Patriots.com, and FF Champs. He's got the third pick, J3, again from the Mock and Roll Show with the John from Bangor, has the fourth pick. Scott Barrett, whose name I can't confuse with anyone else, he has the fifth pick. And then we've got J3 at 6, Jason from New Jersey at 7, myself at 8, Ryan from Easton, Pennsylvania at 9, and Adam with the sweet, sweet hat at 10.
Hey, so, Adam, I have a question for you. You said this sort, in jest, pick the players that score the most points, but I think there's a kernel of truth in that. People who are starting their drafts right now are thinking, do I go wide receiver? Do I go running back, wide receiver? Do I go running back, quarterback? And to me, that question is, frankly, kind of stupid. You want the best players, right? Could you take that a little bit? Or maybe you disagree. Maybe you're like, no, this year you do this specific thing. What do you think, Adam?
I think it's not just about the players. It's about the drop-off, especially at the turn. All right, especially in a bigger league. If you're in a 14 league and you're at the end of the round, even if the best players are wide receivers, you got to ask yourself, what's the running back landscape going to look like when it gets back around to me next time? So I do think, especially in the middle, you can just grab who you think is the best value. But I think at the turns, you kind of have to be a little bit more cognizant of your team makeup, and it's a long time before your next pick. Sometimes you got to play it a little bit safe to make sure you don't get boxed out on the wrong end of a run.
What's your take there, Anthony? What do you think, man? You go in with a strategy? You go in thinking best available?
I think that everybody makes their own strategy before they go into their draft, and it never works out the way you plan anyway, so it's kind of hard. Like, I have an idea in my head of who I want. Like, being top 3 is nice. I love 3 guys. I'm going to get one of them, right? Doesn't matter. But, like Adam was saying, if you're playing the ends, you really do have to be a little safer because there could be a run in that middle. And if you were saying, running back A or B is going to get to me and there's 6 picks and they both go, you're staring at a bad option potentially.
What do you think, Scott?
Yeah, I kind of never have a strategy going into a draft. I kind of let the draft build its own strategy as it goes along. Like recently, I just had a MyFF PC draft. And I was expecting to go, I took Charles first overall, and I was expecting to go wide receiver after that. And I just didn't like any of the wide receivers that fell to me, so I grabbed DeMarco Murray in the second and then Amir Abdullah in the 6th. And this is before the preseason game. And then I grabbed T.Y. Hilton in the 3rd and then went all upside wide receivers from then on out. So I kind of just let the draft dictate where I go rather than going in hard-nosed with a certain style in mind.
And hey, I just want to make mention really quick, our draft, for those who are watching live on YouTube and for our listeners, we're going live here with this draft in about 20 seconds. So once again, I want to welcome everybody to the first annual Pros versus Joes Mock and Roll Show League Draft. And again, first pick, we have Damien from the Mock and Roll Show. We have Jen from New Jersey at 2. Anthony Grace from ESPN Radio the Lehigh Valley at 3, John from Bangor at 4, Scott Barrett from Number Fire at 5, J3 from the Mock and Roll Show, or some sweet music, or ESPN. That's ESPN letting you know the draft is live. Jason 7, myself 8, Ryan from Easton, Pennsylvania at 9, and Adam at 10. And Damien, you are on the clock, and you picked. We have Des Bryant going in
the top 2. Wow.
Des Bryant. Nice. So, Scott, what are your thoughts, man?
Who took Des Bryant there?
I think Jen from Jersey.
Jersey Jen.
Well, I'm from New Jersey as well, so NJ represent. I like to see that. But Jen is obviously a Dallas Cowboy fan, like random New Jersey.
She is a Cowboys fan.
Well,
hey, listen, Damien. I mean, you have Des Bryant over Antonio Brown, don't you?
I did, yeah, I did. My board has been changing a little bit. I at this point I like Brown first. I think I have maybe Julio second. I got to say, as the first pick, I took Le'Veon Bell. I know a lot of owners out there are going to be agonizing a little bit because of his 2-game suspension. I think when he comes back for that Game 3, he is going to be the top scoring running back. And if it's by a wide margin, I would not be the least bit surprised. What do you guys think? You think Bell will be the top scoring back when he comes back? Is he worth the number 1 pick?
Hey, Damien, before they answer that, I just want to, real quick, Jen has chimed in the draft lobby, and she said he led the league in touchdowns, so obviously I took him because I'm a fan of points.
All in caps, too. That's important.
That's true. And again, and a quick rundown. With the first pick, we had Le'Veon Bell. Second pick, Des Bryant. Third pick, Eddie Lacy. The fourth pick was Jamal Charles. The fifth pick, Marshawn Lynch from the Seahawks. At 6, you had Adrian Peterson. And at 7, Matt Forte. Any thoughts on Matt Forte going at 7, boys? And then, of course, Damien, I'm sorry, you can go back with your question.
I like Forte there. I have no problem with that.
All right. Damien, I'm sorry. Can you repeat the question you had? I apologize.
So what do you guys think? I'll toss it over to Anthony. Le'Veon Bell, number 1 overall. Is that a smart move?
I'm 100% on board. That's what I would have done too. So I have no issue with it. I think this guy is the next guy who's going to be like an Adrian Peterson or a LaDainian Tomlinson, a guy that's going to be a consensus number 1 overall pick in fantasy football for the next couple of years. As long as he keeps doing what he's doing, the way he's doing it, I can't see that changing for the next few years.
We have a quick update. C.J. Anderson went at 8. Antonio Brown, wide receiver from Pittsburgh, at 9. And the 10th pick, Adam Harstad, is on the clock.
Uh-oh.
Andrew Luck is off the board, boys. Anthony.
Wow. There you go.
Boom goes the dynamite.
Whoa, there it is. Look at that.
Oh, and Gronk.
Luck and Gronk. He's going 0 RB, ladies and gentlemen. Look at that.
Anthony, what do you think?
I can't hate on these picks. I'm not a big fan of quarterbacks early, but I mean Andrew Luck is a different type of animal for sure. And if you want an elite quarterback, this is where Adam would have to do it. So I like that. Rob Gronkowski is basically a wide receiver 1, so I'm totally on board with the Gronk pick. You're basically solid at 2 positions where a lot of people are going to be streaming consistently. So as long as those guys stay healthy, it's 2 positions you don't have to worry about the entire season.
Yeah, on a weekly basis, you're going to have the edge at quarterback and tight end every single week, and that's listen, and they're big point guys.
I couldn't agree more. John, your boy Odell Beckham Jr. from the New York Football Giants, going at 12. Jeremy Hill from Cincinnati coming to me on the back end at pick 13. And it's funny. There's a guy still up on the board that I know we weren't too high on last week. He fell 3rd when we did our sauce last week. Scott, let me ask you, man, what are your thoughts on DeMarco Murray this season in Philadelphia?
Like I said in the my FFPC draft, I took him in the 2nd round, late 2nd round. Didn't feel too great about it, and even less so now. But he's a safe RB2 pick, I'd say.
Fair enough. Updating at pick 14, Jordy Nelson. Pick 15, DeMarco Murray went off the board. At 16, we had Julio Jones from Atlanta. Damien, I know you're really big on Julio Jones this season, so much so that you're thinking about possibly seeing him go pretty early, in our other draft. Adam, is there a guy maybe in the top 10 wideouts that you think is a little bit underrated on most people's draft boards that maybe should be higher than he is?
Well, from this draft so far, I'd say Antonio. I'm really surprised how many wide receivers are off the board, and he's not one of them. Add one more name to that list.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. By the way, Aaron Rodgers 17, Demaryius Thomas 18, Calvin Johnson 19. AJ Green off the board. This is a people are just flying off the board here, guys. Like I can't even keep up with this stuff now.
I'd like to say, and you know what? Let me toss this question over to back over to Scott. Scott, what do you think about AJ Green this year? I think people are forgetting about him a little bit. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't mind AJ Green. I have him in my high second tier of wide receivers or low first tier. He still has Dalton throwing to him, which concerns me, but definitely should be the number 1 target on that team.
No arguments. AJ Green. I mean, for me, I can't see. I mean, Eifert's going to pick up a bit with Dalton this year. You know, they say that the rapport is looking really good. You know, Eifert is a guy that Dalton, you know, really feels that he can trust now. But I'm with you, man. You know, AJ Green. It's going to be a one-trick pony there in the passing game for me. You know, you just hope that he continues to beat that double coverage, and you know what I mean. And that Jeremy Hill takes some of the pressure off, which you know I think we can all agree. Jeremy Hill is looking like he's going to be a monster this year. You know, so.
And there goes LaShawn McCoy.
LaShawn McCoy. Now let's see. Look at LaShawn McCoy, because LaShawn McCoy. AP. So Anthony, any particular reason you took McCoy this early?
I just think coming back round 3, I like the value. If they say he's going to be healthy to start the season, he's going to be there to play. If he makes it through the full season, Rex Ryan will run him into the ground. So I'm getting the one good season out of him that he can have in Buffalo until he's beaten down and has the DeMarco Murray-like gear he's going to have this year since he had 400 carries.
Yeah, no, that's fair. And Adam from Football Guys, your thoughts?
I'm Dynasty primarily, and I've kind of just been getting there's not really anything super scientific to it. I've just kind of been getting bad vibes from LaShawn McCoy since midway through last season. He's one of those guys when I'm doing my rankings, I'm like, you know, I can't really justify having him any lower than this, but he's not a guy who I'd really like to take where I have him ranked. He's just somebody typically when a back who's past 25, 26 starts showing signs of decline, a lot of times they don't recover, and sometimes they do. I'm not saying he's definitely done, but I think there's enough of a possibility that he's not going to be the same back again that I'd probably be looking at somebody else in that tier instead. Yeah, no, fair enough.
Scott, question for you, my friend. So seeing how this draft is going and whatnot now, you know, you saw a guy like McCoy who's a little bit hurt right now, and that there are some concerns, you know, obviously about him. Would you prefer a guy like him or the guy who just went off the board, Lamar Miller at 26?
Yeah, Damian definitely sold me on Lamar Miller. I think I'd take him over McCoy at this point.
Let me ask you a question, Damian. Who sold you on Lamar Miller?
You know what? Honestly, it was our show when we saw Lamar Miller, and I really got to thinking about him, and I thought about his efficiency was incredible last year. Actually, I think his metrics, according to Number Fire, or maybe it was Pro Football Focus, maybe it was both, were top 5 last year, and now that offense has the potentiality to be just explosive. To me, he's somebody who could easily become an RB1 this year, and you get him in the 3rd round. So I had him above McCoy even before the McCoy hamstring, to be perfectly honest.
To bring everybody up to speed here, so McCoy went at 23. Actually, let's back it up. The last thing I mentioned was A.J. Green at 20. Then we had Randall Cobb go at 21, Alshon Jeffrey, then LaShawn McCoy, Mike Evans, T.Y. Hilton at 25, Lamar Miller 26, Frank Gore went off the board at 27, Ingram at 28, Forsett at 29. Damian, I know that we had been talking a lot about guys like Frank Gore and Mark Ingram and Justin Forsett, and when we had talked about that, I know that we collectively sort of had Frank Gore above the pack. Do you still feel that way? And then Anthony, the same question goes to you. Your thoughts on Frank Gore in the mix, and how high you have him. Damian, go ahead.
I'm going to be perfectly honest, and to me, it's so important not to lock yourself into opinions early in the preseason. My opinions are changing. I've made no apology for that. I always am evolving and changing. I really, really liked Frank Gore I loved Frank Gore. I still like Frank Gore. I'm becoming nervous about Frank Gore because I do not think that Colts O-line is going to be able to run block. He's still 32. I know there's been a lot of arguments against that, but I'm becoming slightly nervous about him.
Fair enough. Anthony, your thoughts?
Yeah, the over 30 running back thing always has to scare you a little bit, but if I'm taking a chance on an over 30, I think Frank Gore this year is a great opportunity to take. He's on the best offense he's ever been on, no doubt about that. He's got the game's best young quarterback. They added another piece in Andre Johnson to make that defense you got to stay beyond honest when you have T.Y. Hilton, Andre Johnson, two potentially stud tight ends as well, Philip Dorsett. There's weapons all over the place, so Frank Gore might not have the same offensive line in front of him. Maybe he doesn't get as many touches this year. Maybe they try to hold him back and keep him healthy for the playoffs. But this guy is going to be on the greatest offense he's ever been on. I like him a lot.
So we're moving through here, and Damien, I just want you to know that I did something I almost never do. I don't know if you saw that last pick, but I took a quarterback. I took Russell Wilson in the 4th round, and I'm a guy who always takes quarterbacks late in drafts. I'm getting thumbs down here from Damien. Adam, are you typically a guy that obviously we saw you take Andrew Luck, with Gronk. Are you a guy who's just not afraid to take? I know you have a list that you're running with, but are you a guy who's not afraid to go quarterback early typically?
Well, the reason that quarterbacks are typically less valuable than the other position is just one of scarcity. There's a lot of decent quarterbacks. You're only starting a few of them a week, and so if you don't have one of the great ones, it's not like you're hard-pressed to get decent production. Whereas at running back and wide receiver, that's more the case. What I like about 10-team leagues is it kind of eases the scarcity at running back and wide receiver, and it makes it more about just getting difference makers regardless of what position they play at. There's still not a whole lot of scarcity at top quarterbacks, but you can get away with skipping running back and wide receiver the first 2 rounds and still get something decent later on. So I'm more interested in taking a quarterback early in a 10-teamer like this than I might be in like a 12 or a 14-teamer.
Scott Barrett from numberfire.com. Your thoughts. Do you have a particular direction that you go with quarterback picks?
All I know is you guys keep asking me questions when I'm on the clock. So
that's a tactic.
That's a tactic.
Strategy.
Listen, we're trying to get you to go to auto pick. It makes it easier for us.
I'll tell you what, I heard none of that question, so I'm going to redirect and ask my own. Adam, Adam, that 1-2 start of Luck and Gronk was very Bloomian of you. I want to know if he played any role in that pick, because I got to say, I'm starting to like that argument. I absolutely love Gronk, especially in a 10-team standard. Gronk has been, I saw a stat earlier today, Gronk has not only been the #1 fantasy tight end of all time in terms of point per game, but he's also 11% better than the #2 tight end on that list.
I wouldn't say that it was Bloom. I cut my teeth in 10-teamers when I first started. And so I kind of grew up in an environment from a fantasy standpoint where there just wasn't the running back scarcity, and so I've always been a big get difference makers regardless of the position kind of guy. And I think I've been driving the Rob Gronkowski bandwagon since for quite a while now. I actually had him as my number 3 overall dynasty player 2 years back when Jimmy Graham was the consensus best tight end. I just think he's Graham's amazing, but Gronk is just transcendent. He's 10-20% better than Jimmy Graham when he's on.
Totally agree.
Go ahead, Scott.
I completely agree. I'm a big Gronk fan.
I just want to say I see Melvin Gordon was taken here by John from Bangor, Pennsylvania. His team is straight out of New Jersey. I'm a big Melvin Gordon buyer right now, and I feel like he's climbing up the list from my standpoint. This guy shows a lot of talent, and a lot of people made a lot of garbage and nonsense, in my opinion, about his first preseason game. I'm getting a bunch of thumbs down here from Damien and John. John, go ahead.
You know my feeling on Gordon.
Yeah, I know you're feeling on Badger backs. Damien, are you still high on Melvin Gordon, or have you kind of fallen off the wagon there?
I think Melvin Gordon might be really good next year. I think he's got a lot to adjust to. You guys, you're burying the lead here, Sean. I took Amir Abdullah. I took the preseason wonder here. I actually reached.
Get out of here.
There's probably about 20 guys in front of him, and I took him.
Jesus. Anthony, has Damien lost his mind here off one carry and a cut to the left?
No, not at all. I love Abdullah. I think he has the best opportunity right now of all these rookie running backs, a bunch of guys that I think we could see great numbers from, maybe like we saw out of the wide receiver rookies last year. We could see that with the running backs, and I think Abdullah has the best chance. I mean, I like Gordon too, but I think the Lions are a little bit better of an offense overall. Rather have Megatron and Golden Tate run down the field than Keenan Allen and whoever else, Malcolm Floyd still. So I feel more confident taking Abdullah at this point over Gordon, but I mean it's close. Gordon's gonna get a lot of touches himself. Other than third downs, he's gonna be in there all the time touching the ball.
I think it's pretty fair to say too that I don't know if you guys have a difference of opinion here, but I think of all the rookie running backs, I also think that Amir Abdullah is running behind the best line of all of the rookie running backs. Say what you will about the Detroit Lions, ups and downs. I think Matthew Stafford's, issues in the past have more to do with Matthew Stafford, standing in tar than, it does that Lions line, which seems to be on the upswing. Would you agree, Adam?
I don't know about their line. I really like Lions backs, especially in PPR, and a lot of that is just Joe Lombardi. And when he switched from the Saints to the Lions last year, I was looking at the history of receptions by running backs. And basically that Sean Payton, Joe Lombardi offense throws to its running backs so much that for fantasy purposes, if you total all the fantasy points across all the running backs, it's pretty much the greatest fantasy offense of all time for running backs in PPR, just because they're catching 120 passes every year. And I think that the Lions backs and the Saints backs often become a little bit underrated because of it, because people are always looking at the bottom line rushing numbers, and they're not really taking into account the fact that pretty much everybody on that team is going to get 40 to 70 catches for 500, 600 yards.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good assessment. I didn't even realize that when you look at all those players,
John, let me cut in here 1 second and add to that. I think Adam makes a really good point about Joe Lombardi. I think Abdullah's going to catch a lot of passes. Here's my stand, gentlemen. When you see talent pop off the page in the NFL, you take it. You take it. One preseason carry, I get that. And a lot of people want to say preseason doesn't matter. I'll disagree with that fairly strongly. Abdullah is the real deal. And do I think he's going to own that backfield? Yes, I do. Joique Bell is still there, but I think Abdullah is going to have a 60% share early on in the season. I think Abdullah is somebody who is potentially a league winner this year.
I just want to mention I'm reading the chat here in our league, and it's getting pretty hilarious and feisty here. And Jen says you took Abdullah, and yet you laughed at me for taking Dez. And then of course Damien chimes back, and then we get a message here that says I love Abdullah more than my girlfriend. I just want to say that I would imagine that either A, your girlfriend is just that cool and has no idea you're saying this because she doesn't follow football. I guess is that the case? Does she just not know this?
Hopefully she's not watching this.
So I wrote that, even though it says my team name is Team Dugan. That's not me. That's actually my best friend whose account I stole to access ESPN Insider, and I accidentally logged into this account. Yeah, I'm safe. I definitely don't love Abdullah more than my girlfriend, but I know she'll never ever read one of my articles or watch this podcast, so we're safe.
Can we wait? Time out. Can we? The look on Adam's face when you said that was priceless.
My question is this. Like we say this in jest, and you clarify here that obviously you don't love Abdullah more than your girlfriend. What are the chances that your girlfriend sees Amir Abdullah and says that she loves him more than you?
I don't blame her. A, he's one of the best non-rookie running backs I've seen in a while. B, he has beautiful eyes. I don't know if you've seen it.
John, any thoughts on Amir Abdullah's eyes?
He has two of them.
Oh my goodness. Listen, Adam, I don't know what's happening at this point. This is it's falling off the rails, guys. No, I'm just kidding.
I haven't even started drinking yet.
I think Damien started at lunchtime.
Hey, Adam, what do you think so far, Adam, looking at the draft, what do you think is the most surprising pick that you've seen?
Edelman, probably, just because it's not PPR. I think that was probably, in terms of where I'd be looking to get him, I think that was the one that's the furthest before I would have been looking. I would like to call out, not as a surprise, but I'm still kind of pissed about the second round. Which round was it? I was looking, when Ingram and Forsett, I had them lined up. I was going to take them right there at that 3-4 turn, and they went the 2 picks right before me, and I'm probably going to hold a grudge about that one all season long.
Damien was texting me and telling me to take Ingram. That's not true, but if you're going to be mad at anybody, be mad at him. And just,
You guys are ruining my strategy to take the guys that'll score points and then leave the guys who won't score points to you guys.
Guys, can we throw this back out? Because right now it's round 6, and Carlos Hyde is still on the board here in round 6. I know Scott was saying before that he would take Reggie Bush over Carlos Hyde, and there has been a mountain of hate for Carlos Hyde this year. Why the hate on Carlos Hyde? Anthony, what do you think, man?
I don't hate Carlos Hyde. I mean, I'm not a huge fan of him necessarily, but I just think that 49ers offense overall I'm not a fan of. I've never really bought into Colin Kaepernick. I don't know if I ever will. I don't think Torrey Smith is a true number 1 receiver. Anquan Bolden I like, but another year older, and he's more valuable in a PPR league. Vernon Davis he's pretty much done for unless he has a miraculous recovery at Antonio like Gates' season from last year. So I'm just not a big fan of that 49ers offense as a whole.
They're a dumpster fire.
They are a complete everywhere. As a Niners fan, I'm going to say they are a complete dumpster fire. I will say this, and I've had this discussion before with these, with Damien and John. I don't blame Vernon Davis for Vernon Davis' downfall. I blame Colin Kaepernick's inability to read past one target before he tucks and runs. I think if Vernon Davis went to a team that even had, listen, I think if Vernon Davis went to, Oakland with Derek Carr, who's a young guy, could use a pacifier over the middle at tight end. You know what I mean? Even if he was playing with like a Mariota or a Winston or really just any serviceable quarterback, a Tannehill, I feel like he'd be an absolute star again. I don't feel like Vernon Davis has lost anything. I blame every bit of it on Colin Kaepernick and his inability to throw to more than one target. Adam, your thoughts about the Davis situation and really, about Colin Kaepernick and how much he affects, the other players' numbers on that team.
I wouldn't even blame it on Kaepernick as much as Harbaugh and the coaching staff. I mean, I think, I don't know if I'll catch flack for this or not, but I think Vernon Davis is and has been the second best tight end in the NFL from, like a talent and NFL ability standpoint. I think other than Gronkowski, there's nobody else who both catches and blocks like Vernon Davis does. And it's just, their offensive line had some trouble a few years back, and so they had to keep Davis in sort of as an extra tackle. I'm not really sure what they're getting at with the way they used him. They won a lot of games. It's really hard to fault them for the decisions that they made. But I do know that if I were a head coach, my team would probably suck, but they would use Vernon Davis a lot more.
Like I said, I'm with you. I think he's an absolutely talented guy who's more a victim of circumstance and situation, than anything. And honestly, I felt the same way. And again, Damien and John, we've talked about this. I feel the same way, about a guy like Crabtree. I think Crabtree's due for a spark back now that he's on a different team in a different system where he has a chance to, make plays. Anthony, are there guys that are on other teams that you can think of? Anybody that stands out in particular that you think is a great talent who's just wasting away in the situation he's in that would be better off elsewhere? Anybody that comes to mind? Man,
that's an on-the-point question. I don't. Here's a guy I'm curious about, and it didn't bother me, but it kind of made me think during the draft. The Rams taking Todd Gurley. I think Trey Mason had a good year when he came in last year. I was excited to see what he could do. And, he's going to have it until Gurley's back, but we all know once Gurley comes back, he's a guy of the future. And totally understandable. I mean, he's an extreme talent guy. You can't take your eyes off when you're watching him play in college, So no qualms with the pick. I just think we haven't seen enough out of Trey Mason. It looked like he could have been onto something there in St. Louis last year.
Yeah, an actual quote from Jeff Fisher was, the reason they drafted Gurley is they see Gurley is the running back of the future, Mason's the running back of right now. So
yeah, for the first 6 weeks, yeah, I get that. That's fine.
I understand. Again, there's a guy who they kind of took a little risk on, coming off that nasty injury coming in college. But I'll tell you, I think out of all the running backs coming in healthy, I think Gurley is probably one of the most talented running backs coming into this class.
Oh yeah, I totally agree. Totally, 100% on board. If he's 100% healthy coming into the draft last year, he could be the number 1 overall pick for all we know, and I wouldn't be shocked if that happened.
Yeah.
Since we're on this running back kick, you guys brought up Melvin Gordon before. Here's why I'm off Melvin Gordon, and I'm going to give all of the credit here to two guys: a guy named Emery Hunt, who has a website called Football Game Plan, and a guy named Kyle Posey, who has a website called Bolts from the Blue Chargers blog. Melvin Gordon has a lot of natural talent, but he dances in the backfield. He hesitates. He stops his feet. And you cannot do that in the NFL. He got away with it at Wisconsin because he had those huge hogs in front of him, that great offensive line. But you saw it in the first preseason game. Gordon just was stopping his feet. He was hesitating. He didn't always make the best read. And so I think it's going to take him a while to get up to speed, which is why I have Abdullah ahead of him. And I have Abdullah ahead of Gurley this year, too. But I do think Gurley's the most talented back coming out of that class.
Damien, I have a question for you. As we're sitting here in around the mid-60s here, the 65th pick, Matt Ryan went off the board. But we had talked about Matt Ryan on the show a few weeks back. We talked about how he's got some good targets. Julio Jones, Roddy White's getting a little bit older. And then we talked about, if I remember correctly, we talked about like a guy like Tannehill over a Matt Ryan. Do you think this is a little too early to see a Matt Ryan go? And is there a quarterback or two that you would take before Matt Ryan that's still on the board here?
Absolutely, Sean. I think, and I'll be even stronger. I don't know who took the pick, and I apologize if it's any of you guys. But to me, that's a wasted pick because Matt Ryan.
That's Scott.
Oh, sorry, Scott. Sorry, Scott. Well, here we go. To me, it's a wasted pick because Matt Ryan's never finished as higher than quarterback 7 in the league, and you can get guys who have upside that's equal to that or higher later on, or you could just stream. He's what? And now I'll do the lawyer thing and I'll give the counter argument. He's very safe. He's going to be consistent. What do you think, Scott? Counterpoint here. Are you regretting that pick or am I wrong?
He's actually not that consistent. He's actually a guy I kind of want to take a committee approach with, stream and waffle between. I'll start him when he's heavily favored. I went with him to kind of increase my upside as I already have Julio Jones. It was between him and Cam. I feel like Cam's going to go off this year. He's finally, now that he's rehabbed from his leg injury. But losing Kelvin Benjamin made me a little uneasy. So I went with Matt Ryan and kind of hoped Cam would fall back to me due to the injury. I have 4 picks to go, so if one of you guys don't snipe me now, hopefully he'll fall back to me and I'll get both.
I just want to mention two picks just went off the board, close to each other that I love. Ryan Pirozzoli from Easton, Pennsylvania. I really like Jarvis Landry this year, especially with how much firepower in general they brought to that Miami offense this year. And I think Jarvis Landry, while being a dangerous target, is going to be a guy whose name, itself when defenses, game plan against him is going to sort of, slip through a little bit, and get some big breakaway plays. Johnny, I'll take it to you. Your thoughts on Jarvis Landry in Miami's offense?
I like him. Young receiver. I think Tannehill is going to have a very good year this year. Lamar Miller's, I think he's going to have a breakout year. I have no problem with Jarvis Landry. I think that's a good pick, and I like, again, them having Jordan Cameron now. It helps with depth and helps with kind of opening up the field. Getting other options away, and I believe Kenny Stills is also there. So I think they have a lot of good weapons there. But I think athletically, I think Jarvis Landry is probably the most probably athletic guy at the wide receiver position for the Dolphins.
Anthony, question for you there. Talking about the new weapons that are over there in Miami, of course, at Ryan Tannehill's disposal, and then of course you're having what everybody seems to believe, including myself, is going to be the real emergence of Lamar Miller, for that Miami offense in the running game. Jordan Cameron's a talented player, and he showed that. Jarvis Landry has big playability. Kenny Stills obviously is had big playability in New Orleans. Who do you think steals the show from the pass catching side of Miami's offense? And do you think it's going to be a far and away stealing of the show?
Wow. Fantasy-wise, obviously Jarvis Landry, if you're playing a PPR league, is going to be the guy you want to target for a Miami Dolphins wide receiver. There's no doubt about that. This guy could be a gem in PPR. He could be a guy that catches close to 100 passes. I wouldn't be shocked. I mean, the Miami Dolphins, I think, are one of the next up-and-coming offenses in this league. So if they can click, this guy can put on a show. I love Jordan Cameron going there, too. I think that's a huge upgrade for Jordan Cameron. I mean, he came from Cleveland, so going anywhere from Cleveland is a huge upgrade. But going down to Ryan Tannehill and that offense around him and Lamar Miller in the backfield, they're set in every position basically at offense. So they're going to be a fun team to watch. But I think PPR leagues are going for Jarvis Landry. Standard leagues, I think, outside of Ryan Tannehill, I like Jordan Cameron a lot.
And another pick that I saw that I really like, if you can get him late in your draft, especially if you have, a keeper league and things like that. Adam, I saw that you took Arian Foster. Was that just part of your game plan, or did you just see that as a value pick for later in the season?
Oh, I just decided to do a Tom Brady, Arian Foster turn just to give you guys something to talk about.
Well, it worked. Here we are.
No, I've looked at it in the past, and in terms of how points correlate to your chances of winning a championship, obviously the more points a player scores, the more likely you are to win a championship. But points that come during the playoff weeks are about 3.5 times as valuable in terms of helping your championship odds than points that come during the regular season. So if I can get a guy who maybe sits out the first 6 weeks, but then is a top 5, top 10 player during the playoffs, he's going to help me a lot more than a lesser guy who might give me the full season. So I already had 3 running backs. Foster's kind of a luxury at that point. Hopefully by the time injuries are hitting my other guys or some guys are starting to really struggle and get cut, Foster will be coming back and riding to the rescue.
I think you make a good point. And yeah, you do have the quite the luxury at running back on your team earlier in the draft.
One thing real quick. Let me hop in real quick, and I want to see what people have to say about this. So I just took Devonta Freeman in our draft on ESPN leagues, and this will definitely change. I think. I mean, you never know, but I think ESPN rankings will change to reflect. Tevin Coleman is way higher than Devonta Freeman right now. There was just a report on Atlanta radio. Roddy White said Devonta Freeman's going to start the season as the starter. To me, I think Devonta Freeman is far and away the better running back, not the better combine measurables guy. That's Tevin Coleman. But to me, Devonta Freeman is going to be a steal in drafts this year. What do you guys think?
I agree. Listen, I like Devontae Freeman. Again, being a Florida State kind of homer that I am, seeing him play in college, seeing what he can do in space. He's one of those shifty backs who can, he dances a little bit, but once he gets going, he's a very fast, especially on that turf in Atlanta. I like it. Until we see more of Tevin Coleman. Listen, he's hurt. He's banged up now. Who knows when he comes back? But I think you kind of have to use the eye test. And Devontae Freeman is a young guy. He's a quick guy. He's a fast guy. I like Devontae Freeman just fine.
Scott from numberfire.com. I do have a question for you, but I want to give it a few seconds until J3's done picking because you'll be on the clock. And I feel like so far that's been a good way to go. So in the meantime, Damian, real quick, 40-second question and answer here for you. Your thoughts on the impact that Kevin White being injured has, on your Chicago Bears?
Well, I mean, on the Bears, I don't have any optimism for the Bears. I think the Bears will finish with a worse record this year than the 49ers. I like them less than the 49ers. Their defense is definitely worse than the 49ers, and that's saying a lot. The impact he'll have there, I think Alshon Jeffrey is going to be a target monster. I mean, Jay Cutler's going to throw a ton of targets to him, and Eddie Royal is going to get a tremendous amount of targets. Matt Forte is not going to get as many targets as he got last year under Trestman. Those targets have to go somewhere. That's going to be a losing team. They're going to be throwing the ball. Eddie Royal is going to surprise people. I think Eddie Royal could easily be a wide receiver 2 this year with upside for maybe more in PPR, depending. Maybe that's a little bit of a stretch, but at wide receiver 2, I think.
Yeah, I think you make a lot of really valid points.
I like the black unicorn.
I was gonna say, unfortunately, Damien, you took long enough that I couldn't interrupt Scott's pick with questions. So now he actually has free time. Totally ruins it. No, I'm just kidding. Scott, very similar question, but actually it's with regards to, I feel like you almost have to assume now that Kelvin Benjamin is out that, the Panthers just completely fell apart. You know what I mean? I mean, Jonathan Stewart looks like, he can do some things there, but I don't know if he's going to carry the load. I know Johnny, I believe, is not super high on Cam Newton this year. I mean, is there any hope you really think for the Panthers at this point? And how do you think they finish this season?
The Panthers, if they want to go back to a really high playoff caliber team, they're going to have to be carried again by their defense, and you saw that's not really what happened last year. I know Kuechly was hurt, but if they want to do anything, they're going to need to get carried by their defense. As far as fantasy appeal, however, I definitely can see Cam Newton being fantasy relevant again. I came across a nice stat earlier today where Cam ran between weeks 13 and 17, except for week 15 when he was hurt. Cam ran 9.8 times a game, and he averaged only 7.9 his first 2 seasons. He was the QB1 in fantasy, and Kelvin Benjamin was basically the wide receiver 59. So I think that even with the Kelvin Benjamin injury, it's not really a death knell to Cam, and he could still be a fantasy dynamo.
Yeah,
as long as he keeps running.
Well, I was gonna say, good players make plays. You know what I mean? They make it work. They make it happen. And a guy like Cam Newton, who was under so much scrutiny early in his career for not taking leadership, not putting things on his back, not taking the losses, and putting them on him instead, pointing fingers around his team. He's really kind of stepped it up. You know what I mean? And he's really been that leader that Carolina needs. He's been that franchise player that Carolina needs. And with Kelvin Benjamin going out, I feel like it's really an opportunity for him to show that even more to the Panther faithful, that, hey, listen, we're going to go down fighting one way or the other, and I'm going to carry this team on my back, and we're going to make the best of it. Anthony, I see. You can see that. I took Joique Bell here. He was on the board for a while. He sat there. I know Damien's got Abdullah, who seems like he's going to be the clear front runner there in Detroit at this point. Do you feel like Bell still has some decent fantasy value, or would you say that that's sort of a wasted pick?
I'm not going to say it's a wasted pick. I can't say that at all. I mean, what was that, round 10 you got him in? So that's value for him right there. I definitely – I'm not a guy who wants Joique Bell on my team personally this year, but, again, you got great value for him. So if for some reason Abdullah does go down or, that first preseason week was a flash in the pan and he's not what we expect him to be, then Joique Bell obviously gets the opportunity. They don't really have anyone else besides Joique that can come in there and take a full workload. I mean, Theo Riddick can't do that. So, Joique Bell, not a bad pickup, not a guy I want on my team, but I can't hate on that pick right there.
I'm gonna put everybody out here, and I'm gonna go across the board. Adam, I'm gonna start with you. For our listeners, and for our Joes even maybe that are looking for some advice, as far as any other drafts they might be doing, and from a strategy standpoint, if you had to pick one guy that is your big sleeper in this season's fantasy draft, who's a guy that people should be looking out for?
Honestly, I have to say this is my first draft of the season. I've been deep in a writing and researching funk, so I'm kind of shaking off the rust and coming out of hibernation. I do like I always like Jordan Reed. He puts up big numbers when he's healthy, and I know the when he's healthy qualifier is kind of the deal right there. But I think past injuries predict future injuries with a lot less power than people assume. So I like Jordan Reed. I like Tyler Eifert for the same reason. Guys who were hurt last year who had high expectations and then got hurt, for some reason the expectations go down, and I don't know that they necessarily should. I mean, I think just give them a mulligan on the season. I think you've noticed through the course of my draft, I wind up with pretty much all of the broken toys. I got Brady, I've got Gurley, I've got Foster. Pretty much anybody who's hurt, ailing, but super talented is probably going to wind up on my squad.
Yeah, and for those watching on YouTube, I'm featuring Team Harstad right there. You can see on the right-hand side of the screen. We're drafting, of course, through ESPN Fantasy Football. And you can see, the Luck pick, and then, of course, Morris and LeGarrette Blount, DeAndre Hopkins, who's going to be, taking over there and really seems like he's poised to be the man in Houston now, especially with Arian Foster being out. The same question goes to you, Anthony. Do you have a guy that you're really kind of honed in on, or that people, maybe aren't paying attention to that could be the big sleeper this season?
Man, one guy in particular. Big sleeper. I know we haven't seen much of him yet. Nelson Aguilar of Philadelphia, that first preseason game, I think he did a few things in that one play, that touchdown catch. I mean, he showed he's got tremendous athletic ability, jumping up to get that ball, saving Mark Sanchez from a potentially horrible throw going in the first row right there, and jumped up, grabbed it, and then showed burst and speed. So I was a little curious to see what we got out of him. I know there was talk in Philadelphia of every wide receiver getting reps with the ones, and Aguilar wasn't getting as many, it didn't seem, but this guy's going to be fine. And in that offense with Chip Kelly, likes to just throw the ball and quick little strikes. This guy could be very special. And if Sam Bradford stays healthy, I mean, that guy was the number one pick for a reason. So if the team clicks, Nelson Aguilar could put up some numbers like Jeremy Maclin did last year.
Yeah, Damian, who do you got?
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna go with a guy that he's a sleeper in a lot of places, not in certain circles. Minnesota Vikings wide receiver Charles Johnson, to me this year, he's the X receiver in a Norv Turner offense. You might remember the last X receiver in a Norv Turner offense. Well, I guess that would be Vikings, but you might remember a guy named Josh Gordon. Now, I'm not saying Charles Johnson is Josh Gordon, but they're pretty close.
See, I remember a guy named Cordero Patterson, too.
Well, you know what? There's a counter argument. I would say that I think Charles Johnson can run routes. Cordero, not as much.
Not as much.
Yeah.
Johnny, do you have a sleeper?
Yeah, my deep sleeper is someone. It seems like a lot of people are forgetting because because superstar Odell Beckham is New York Giants, is Victor Cruz. He's a guy who who's really, I think, in that offense is really going to benefit from Odell Beckham being as good as he is. Odell Beckham's going to draw a lot of attention over on that side of the field, where they're going to move Victor Cruz around. They're going to put him in the slot. They're going to put him at the number 2 spot. I think this is going to be his comeback year. And I think with Odell Beckham being there, I think it's just going to bring bigger and better things for really a stacked New York Giants wide receiving core, especially Victor Cruz.
Scott, you made the pick just in time. You're on the clock for the question, so I can't interrupt your pick. Who's your sleeper this season?
That wasn't me. That was a different DU something. But I'm coming up, so you.
Oh, that was
perfect
Jason.
timing.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm in 7 more spots. Sleeper, I don't know. That's a tough question. The first 2 articles of the year I wrote were on Abdullah and Aguilar, who I absolutely loved pre-draft and immediately following the draft. But their ADPs have both kind of risen to about near where I have them. Sleeper, it's hard to say, but so far I've been in 3 drafts, and I seem to own John Brown, Jordan Reed, Tyler Eifert, Brian Quick, Rashad Perriman, and Abdullah, and pretty much all of them. I just had an article come out a few weeks ago on James White, who he's probably my late-round guy right now.
And of course, for our listeners and for our viewers, you can go to numberfire.com and follow Scott Barrett's articles. I know Damien has been a big fan. Damien, have you sent love notes to that effect?
I have. I've sent many a love note to that effect. Great articles, great work for sure. Really great work from. Let's sing Kumbaya, guys. Great work from all of these guys. We're lucky to be in the presence of 3 excellent fantasy football minds. It's just such a shame, guys, that I'm just mopping y'all up in this draft here.
See now Damien wants to make that comment. Now, Damien, I'm gonna give you the most on-the-spot question of the draft. You ready?
Oh, good. I'm ready.
Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. Damien, with the quick remarks and the quick trash talks, of the 3 pros, who is the best writer? No, I'm just kidding. That's not a fair question to ask. I'm just kidding. Anyway, Anthony, taking a look at your draft here. Let's take a look at what we got. How are you feeling so far looking at your team? Eli, by the way, I'm a big fan of Eli Manning this year in fantasy football. I think he's going to have a monster season. He's got so many talented weapons, which I know I'm making John all bubbly inside being a Giants fan, hearing me sing the praises of Eli Manning, who I have stayed away from like he's had the plague every year for the past probably 6 years. This is the first year that I actually been looking to take the guy. So I like the pick there. And then, you've got interesting thing I noticed about your team, and I don't know if you guys caught this, but Anthony, you have both Denver wide receivers.
Yeah, I didn't want to do that, to be honest with you. Demaryius came back round 2. Obviously, I'm not letting him pass me up there. And Emmanuel Sanders in the 5th round, he came back to me, and I couldn't pass him up. I know it's a huge risk to have 2 guys from the same team, but tremendous value there. So maybe trade bait for somebody. I feel like I got a strong bench, and my wide receivers are Golden Tate and Macklin and Aguilar. So if one of those guys pops up, one of these 2 Denver guys could be on the trade block soon.
Interesting. Adam, any thoughts on Joseph Randall, who also ended up being on Anthony's team?
There's a line of thought that you want to get the workhorse guy because somebody's got to get, somebody's going to produce. And I know that offensive line is amazing. I'm always leery of drafting people because you like their situation. Just because, sometimes somebody doesn't produce. I remember 2013, people were drafting Jets receivers saying somebody's got to produce. And then around Christmas time, the Jets had their first receiver top 400 yards for the season. So, sometimes somebody doesn't produce. Sometimes the guy who struggled to win the job over the last couple of years struggles to win the job over the next couple of years. He's probably riskier than I would have liked I believe he went in the 4th. Probably somebody I would have been looking at in the next round, but I think just a little bit rich for me there.
Yeah, and John, I'm actually taking a look at your 3. I'm looking at your team, and I got to say, somehow I feel like you kind of snuck away with, just an absolutely, talent-stacked team. Has a lot of potential. I mean, you've got Peyton Manning at quarterback, even though I feel like his numbers are going to be down a bit this season. But, you've got Adrian Peterson and DeMarco Murray, and of course we'll see what happens with Murray in Philly. Vincent Jackson is going to be, right up there, running alongside Mike Evans. You're going to get a lot of play out of him, too. We'll see who Jameis Winston's favorite target ends up being. I know you kind of have the quarterback situation going on in New York, throwing to Brandon Marshall, but I feel like Fitzpatrick obviously gives him, believe it or not, a better option.
I think he goes up with Fitzpatrick there.
Yep, I agree. And then I mean, you're talking about 3 potential RB1s when you have Lamar Miller there, and not to mention you have Jimmy Graham in your starting lineup. You know what I mean? Damian, I don't know if you've been paying attention to...
Yeah, I see his team. For me, he's just going to have to withstand the hot garbage he has at wide receiver there.
Yeah,
everything else
definitely my weakest part of my team is my wideout. But
wide receiver there looks real rough, but everything else looks amazing.
Yeah, I think this year, probably more than a lot of years, I think wide receiver is the easiest to mask. I think it's easier to fill that position in. You're going to see some guys kind of rise up that maybe you didn't know about, that you didn't hear about, that weren't projected as high as they were. So I'm not too worried about that. I think that's the deepest position out there. So I'm not worried about that. I'm just glad I got a lot of beef at running back. So
let's talk.
I got Jameis Winston. So
let's talk a little bit about the teams here that we have drafted by some of our Joes that are a part of this league. Looking first at the number 2 pick here, we have Jersey Jen's team. Scott. When you see that you have, a quarterback, like Tony Romo, and then, of course, Latavius Murray and Chris Ivory, a wide receiver seems to be the strongest position she has, with Des Bryant, Calvin Johnson, and of course, Alshon Jeffrey. I think the first question for me that comes to mind is, which position would you rather be in? Would you rather be stacked at running back like John is, and then have, the wide receivers that he has, or would you want to be in a position here where you got a Des Bryant, a Calvin Johnson, and Alshon Jeffrey, and just have to contend with Latavius Murray, who we're sort of the jury's out on that right now, and then a Chris Ivory. Your thoughts on those 2 situations?
Yeah, it's a tough one. I'm looking at Jen's team, and I gotta be honest, I'm not sold on Latavius Murray. He's a 2-down back, and Chris Ivory we're hoping isn't a 2-down back, but we're pretty sure he is. And then beyond that, Trey Mason and Andre Williams and Lorenzo Taliaferro. I think I'd rather be in J3's position, stacked with Adrian Peterson, DeMarco Murray, Lamar Miller, and then he has a lot of high floor guys at wide receiver: Vincent Jackson, Brandon Marshall, Martavis Bryant. If Victor Cruz is healthy, I feel like it's only a 2 wide receiver, 1 flex league, so I feel like at least 2 of those guys are going to end up being high wide receiver 2s.
Fair. Now, Adam, I'm going to bring the next Joe's team to you, and actually they're on the clock right now, where they just were. We had straight out of New Jersey, which is John from Bangor. When you look at his team, of course, his starting lineup on paper right now is Aaron Rodgers, a quarterback, Jamal Charles, Melvin Gordon, who we did talk about, Mike Evans, Keenan Allen, who some people think is poised to have a comeback season, and some people are saying, I think we've seen enough. Dwayne Allen, of course, tight end in Indy, and then his flex, he's got Rashad Jennings, but you can see he does have some other options there. What really stands out to you when you look at his roster so far, and where might you have thought to do something a bit different?
I actually like what he's done. I like, 10-teamers, like I said, are about difference makers, and I think Rodgers and Charles gives him a really nice pair. I thought Evans was really good value. I think he got him in the 3rd, which he was the top guy on my board when he went off. I liked that pick. And I really like Jennings in the flex, too, in a non-PPR league where you're starting 2 running backs and 2 wide receivers. I think the ability to start a quality starting running back in the flex is going to be a pretty big weekly advantage. So I kind of like the start that he's gotten off to. Once you get to the middle of the draft and everybody's picking their favorite sleepers. Maybe his favorite sleepers aren't my favorite sleepers, but I don't think I have any real quibbles with how he started his team so far.
Interesting, and it's good thoughts. And by the way, for our Joes that are in this, these guys are all available on Facebook. If you want to reach out to any of these pros, or if anybody listening wants some great advice from some great fantasy writers, of course you can reach out to Adam Harstad at Adam Harstad on Twitter. Scott Barrett at Dude Fantasy Bro, and then of course Anthony Grace, who I'm going to pitch the next Joe's team to, is at the PPR Monster. And of course you can follow the Mock and Roll Show on Instagram for some hilarious memes, on Twitter, and we're on Facebook. Just look us up. We are at Mock and Roll Show. Anthony, I'm going to come to you, and I'm actually going to jump down to the later Joe's roster that we have here. I'm looking right now at Ryan from Easton, Pennsylvania's team. He's got started here with Ben Roethlisberger at quarterback, Justin Forsett at running back, Andre Ellington, and then he went, strong at wideouts early. He went with Antonio Brown and Odell Beckham Jr., who share a bye week, Martellus Bennett in Chicago, and then Julian Edelman. Your thoughts, anything strong maybe that you see on the bench that you would want to bump up into that flex or otherwise, or what stands out to you with Ryan's team?
Yeah, look, I'm a huge fan of Forsett. Antonio Brown and Odell Beckham, that's an awesome wide receiver combination. Those are my top two wide receivers right now this year. Martellus Bennett, Brandon Marshall's gone. Those targets are going somewhere. Martellus Bennett, I think, might be the biggest beneficiary. So I love that tight end. The Edelman pick is kind of weird for where it was. I agree with that in a non-PPR type league, and a solid bench. Landry, Vereen, Giovanni Bernard, you got him in I think the 11th or 12th. I think that's great value. If Jeremy Hill goes down, this guy's already been a starter. John Brown. So I like the depth on this bench. I like most of the starters on the team. Andre Ellington's a big question mark, but again, if this guy produces like they were expecting to do last year, another steal on this team. So I'm a big fan. A lot riding on the Roethlisberger to Antonio Brown connection, but I don't think that's going to be a problem at all.
All right. Now, Damian and John, there's one more Joe's team left here, and so I'm going to split this between the two of you guys, both off of your insight here. Jason's team, for me, it looks to be pretty solid, across the board as far as from a talent standpoint. Situations, of course, I know Adam doesn't, like to really look at situations with players as much as, other things. But when you guys look at the team that Jason has here with Drew Brees, Matt Forte, Frank Gore, Jordy Nelson, Brandon Cooks, Julius Thomas, and Sammy Watkins, again, there's some situations that you'd rather not have. Of course, with Julius Thomas leaving Peyton Manning, now he's got Blake Bortles, and then Sammy Watkins, who really knows what's going on up there in Buffalo. But Johnny, I'm going to start with you. What really pops out to you with Jason's team, and your thoughts about that starting lineup?
No, I think it's a solid team. I don't think this is the winning team, but I think it's a pretty good team. I'm not high on Sammy Watkins. I think he fell for a reason. That quarterback situation there is a mess. Julius Thomas, I know he has the broken hand, but he should be back for week 1. Big question marks there. What was he a total Peyton Manning product, or is there more talent there? I like Matt Forte this year. I think overall it's solid. I think if he plays the waiver wire, I think he should. I think this could be a playoff team, but again, you'd have to play the waiver wire pretty close.
Yeah, and I'll jump in and I'll say that I think it's a really good team. All of these 10-team leagues teams look really good. Yeah. The only pick I think I wouldn't have done. Everybody else, I even like Watkins there. Everybody else is great. I would not have taken Drew Brees where he took him again. To me, especially in a 10-team league, you have Ryan Tannehill on the bench, and I'll make a prediction here. I think that by week 6 or 7, Jason's going to be thinking really hard about starting Tannehill over Brees in the first place. That's just my take on it. So I would have taken somebody else in that spot personally. I saw Adam shaking his head. Adam, you're a Brees believer.
Yeah, in my mind, Brees is passing for 5,000 yards until I see otherwise. Every year he's going to be putting up 5,000 yards. he's just, it seems crazy to be saying this now when he first did it, and it hadn't been done since Marino. But he's just done it year after year after year. He did it when Peyton was out with Bountygate. He did it. So I tend to be on Drew Brees. I think he's given me enough where I give him the benefit of the doubt, and I assume he's going to be a top quarterback until I see otherwise.
Well, first I want to say that we've heard a lot of really great points here tonight from our pros. And by the way, as we start to wrap things up, on our live broadcast and on the podcast version of the show, on behalf of John and Damian and our listeners and I'm sure our Joes, we definitely want to thank each of you guys for coming on and bringing your insight, bringing your opinions and your strategies and things like that. So we want to thank Anthony from FFChamps.com, ESPN Radio of the Lehigh Valley, and Fantasy Football Champs, which you can listen to on Patriots.com. Make sure to follow him at the PPR Monster. Scott Barrett from NumberFire.com, Pro Football Focus. Follow him at Dude Fantasy Bro, and Adam. Of course, from Football Guys, follow him on Twitter at Adam Harstad. Before we, sign off the live portion of this show, Adam, anything you want to say, anything you want to plug, anything you want to, send out as a last piece of advice to our listeners tonight?
No, not really. It's fun to be drafting again. It's fun to finally get the season started off. I've kind of been looking forward to this, the mid-August ramp up. So thanks for having me on.
Oh, of course, we look forward to having you back in the future to talk some more fantasy football. Anthony, I pitch it over to you, my friend. I know we're going to see you again, of course, in the near future. Anything any parting words?
I'm on board with Adam, man. We're drafting again. I'm so excited. I mean, I wish we would have waited a little longer. That Kelvin Benjamin injury could have been a day later, and someone could have been really hurting. So I like to do them a little bit later, but look, back in the draft mode. I love it. I can't wait to be back with you guys. We'll talk more fantasy whenever you want. And if anybody else wants to listen to me out there, ffchamps.com, Patriots.com radio, Tuesdays, Thursdays, 4 to 6 p.m.
Awesome. And by the way, it's interesting you guys are saying, it's nice to get back into the drafting and the ramp-up period and get this thing going. Damien, before I head over to Scott, I'm pretty sure this is your 465th draft if you include your mocks, right?
Well, this is actually my first legit draft of the year. I've only done Draft Wizard mocks. So I haven't even done a live people mock this year. So this is number one.
Have you done a dead people mock?
I have not. No.
And Scott, I'm going to bring it over to you, my friend. Again, we had a great time. I wish I had that beard, man. That was a great picture. You sort of just killed it for me, man. Everybody else is obsessed with Amir's eyes. I was loving that beard, dude. I don't know, but listen, I want to thank you so much for being a part of the show with us, and we look forward to having you on the show in the future. Anything you'd like to say to our listeners?
Yeah, this is so fitting because I'm on deck right now with my last pick. Thank you so much for having me on, man. I'm a big fan of the podcast, except for Damien, who's dead to me now after that Matt Ryan comment. But thank you so much, Sean, John, Adam, guys, Anthony. It was a pleasure.
Awesome.
Always, man. We'll be talking. Don't worry.
Absolutely. Hey, listen, on behalf of everyone here at the show, thank you so much. Again, tune in every Wednesday night. We're live on YouTube. We have a Thursday and or Friday, podcast that goes up. It's going to be moving to Thursdays at the start of the NFL season. You can get that on iTunes. Subscribe to us on iTunes. We appreciate all the support. Our numbers have gone up huge. Our downloads have, what was it, Damien? They multiplied over 4 times over the past few weeks. So thank you so much to our listeners. Again, follow us on Instagram. A bunch of hilarious memes that J3 over there puts together. We post them up every day. There's something new, something fresh. Yeah, see? Anthony's showing some love over there.
I love it, yeah. You're hilarious. Keep it up, brother.
So, follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Mock and Roll Show. Next week, we're going to try and get Jen from New Jersey as our guest, one of our Joes, or I guess you could call her Joanne. We're going to try and have her on to talk about her experience with the draft, anything maybe that she picked up from our pros here that maybe changed the way she thought, and how she still feels about that number 2 pick of Des Bryant, since we had some interesting conversation there. But we'll be back next Wednesday night live, 9:30 on YouTube. We want to thank you guys so much, and we'll see you next week right here on the Mock and Roll Show.